I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up with the head. Intercepted. 30. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then the cannons come. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new season of coverage here on the Cannon Fire Podcast. I know we kind of kicked off our season of coverage back when the new league year started, and I know we've done a couple of podcasts since then. We talked about mini OTAs with Rock Riley a couple of weeks ago as well. But I always consider this time of year to really be when we can ease our way back into things and pick up where we left off at the end of last season. And that's exactly what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are doing this week, as they are back at the facility for the start of training camp. Football's back. And at this point, for this time of year, it doesn't get any more back than this, my friend. Evan, how are you doing?
Good. Obviously, this time of year is obviously the exciting time, right? It's when you get that first taste, before you know it, the preseason games will be here, and then next thing you know, it's opening day. I mean, we're basically, it's July 26th. We're getting pretty darn close to August, and the next thing you know, it's September. So, it's gearing up, and the Bucs, who had not put on pads yet, I believe Todd Bowles said, I think Monday they're going to be putting on pads. So, it's an exciting time though.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the top headlines and players from this week at Advent Health Training Center. And like you said, it's exciting to get around to this time of year because things get hot and heavy. It's like getting onto a water slide with a heavy current. Like you try to ease yourself into it, and then you just get swept up. You're all of a sudden, you're on your back, you're spinning around, you don't know where you are, and the preseason's over. We're getting ready for week 1 against Washington. So very excited. The countdown is on. But one of the biggest stories from training camp this week obviously has nothing to do with football, but it's got to do with Randy Gregory, an outside linebacker the Buccaneers signed back in the spring, who didn't show up to OTAs. And then the expectation was that he was going to be here this week for the start of mandatory training camp. Was not there either. There was news that broke in June that Randy Gregory was filing a lawsuit against the NFL over claims of discrimination by the league when he was fined over $500,000 last year for taking medicine that had THC in it. The report said that Gregory was taking dronabinol.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that twice. Which is a medicine that treats social anxiety disorder and PTSD. While THC is no longer on the NFL's banned substances list, players are subjected to fines for positive tests. It is currently unknown whether Gregory's continued absence is related to the lawsuit. This would have been, I think, his 4th team in 3 or 4 years. Todd Bowles didn't seem to have a lot of patience with it either. He wasn't going to speculate, and he wasn't going to entertain the media either. He said, quote, "I'm done with the Gregory questions," earlier this week. Evan, what's your 2 cents on what's going on here with Randy Gregory?
Look, I mean, was it good that he didn't show up, mandatory OTAs, mandatory minicamp, whatever? No, but at the end of the day, I didn't think it was the end of the world. I didn't really think it was a huge deal, and figured it was probably most likely, but it probably had nothing to do with the Bucs. Just had most likely because he was suing the NFL. Maybe that lawsuit has gone slower than he expected. Maybe that he was hoping to get this sort of finalized, but at this point, I don't see how you can keep this guy around. I think you'd be better off just cutting ties. And I don't know if the Bucs were completely knowledgeable at the time when they signed him that this could be a possibility. Obviously, I would hope not, because, I mean, if it's a possibility, if you know that it's a possibility that he's not going to show up to training camp, why are you spending your resources there in the first place? But I just don't see. I mean, even when this guy does show up, if he shows up at all, what's the message going to be? Is he going to be welcomed back with open arms? And the message is that what you can skip out all this stuff, and while you might get fined, there is no repercussion. So I just think they have to cut him. I don't expect him to be on the roster much longer. I don't. I think there's going to be a solution coming sooner rather than later, or a resolution, I should say. I just can't see a way that this guy is on the football team for much longer. I really can't. I was willing to give him a pass, and I was like, all right, well, doesn't show up in training camp, then you have an issue. And now he's not showing up in camp, and it's not good all around. So the Bucs, went out and got a veteran pass rusher, which I thought was a decent move. I thought they needed a veteran pass rusher. They got one, and it turns out the one they got, doesn't want to show up. And I know some people may think, well, oh, he didn't want to play for the Bucs or whatever. The Bucs didn't force him to sign. I don't think it's that. I don't know. I have no idea. And the Bucs, Todd Bowles may know, right? He's not going to tell the media, right? Yeah. Todd Bowles, Jason Light, I'm sure they've talked to Randy Gregory. I'm sure they've been in contact. They have to have some sort of clue as to what's going on. Maybe that's why they haven't cut ties yet. Maybe Gregory's like, look, like, I've given you a definitive date when I'm going to come, and they have an understanding, whatever. Maybe, but we don't know that, right? So the facts that we do know right now is Randy Gregory's not there, and he needs to be, and I think there needs to be some consequences for that.
On Tuesday, the Bucs placed him on the reserve, did not report list. We'll ultimately see what happens. I'm not going to spend much time speculating, but if I had to throw something out there, as of right now, my gut feeling kind of says along the lines of what you were thinking. I don't think this has anything to do with the Bucs. I don't think it's because he doesn't want to play in Tampa. I don't think it's because of head coach Todd Bowles. I don't think there was any drama that we're going to hear about. I'm sure that it really has most of everything to do with what's going on between him and the body that is the National Football League. So it'll all come out in the wash, but let's talk about the players who did show up this week. And really on the other end of the spectrum here, you've got Tristan Wirfs, who is out there practicing. Now, Tristan Wirfs kind of did a mini hold-in, I guess they would call it, for OTAs. He showed up for the mandatory days, so he did not get fined, but he did not go through any participation during practice. He didn't really make much contact. He wasn't doing a lot of organized team activities, if you will. He was just there and present. Well, this week, he was there. Not only was he out there, he was full participation, full go with the rest of his teammates. And Wirfs and the Bucs are still working on a long-term extension. He is our franchise left tackle, so it's one of those things where it almost feels like a foregone conclusion. This deal is going to get done, but it is great to see Tristan Wirfs out there. And you talked a lot about the tone that's being set by Randy Gregory. I mean, Tristan Wirfs is literally doing the opposite here in every way.
Yeah. No, he is, because he doesn't have to, right? He could have certainly, said, hey, I'll be there, but gonna take it easy. He could have certainly taken that road, and instead he didn't. Instead, he wants to practice and risking. He's risking a lot. Hundreds of millions of dollars here. The tackle market. I think Christian Darrisaw has got a new deal for the Minnesota Vikings. The tackle market is huge. Right? Trent Williams is holding out in San Francisco right now because he wants a new deal. And some people have asked me sort of, on Instagram, Twitter about, updates on the Wirfs situation. There really isn't, right? There really isn't any news to report or anything like that on the extension thing. They're going to get it done. I thought there was more of a shot that the Bucs would lose Antoine Winfield Jr. than there was Tristan Wirfs. You don't see left tackle, you don't see tackles period this good really hit the market, but especially since he was this good at left tackle, you don't see them hit the market really ever, especially not 25, 26-year-old left tackles. So he's gonna get a deal done. It's gonna be massive. It's gonna be, I would guess sooner rather than later. I would guess before the season starts, he's going to get that deal done. So I don't really think there's much to worry about there. I wouldn't be concerned long term. Now, if it's the end of the season, he still doesn't have a deal, okay, then you get to talk about that, because then things get a little interesting. But I would be stunned. If this guy even gets anywhere close to the open market, I'd be even more stunned if he left. That would be shocking, but I have no doubt that they're going to get a contract done. But regardless, it is nice to see that he is, he is putting a good foot forward, and he is, he's participating, because, like I said, he he does not have to. He does not have to do that right now.
Just like a lot of the players and the storylines we're going to talk about today, it'll be interesting to see if anything changes once the pads go on. Maybe Tristan Wirfs isn't as eager to go out there and play once the pads go on, and you do have that risk of injury going full contact. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Maybe by the time the Bucs have their first fully padded practice, they'll have that deal done. Who the hell knows? But expect that deal to be done. We have been shouting that from the rooftops, along with every other Bucs media outlet since like March. Expect that deal to get done. Tristan Wirfs not going to be going anywhere. Phones are on, by the way. If you want to chime in, your thoughts on Buccaneers football making its triumphant return, 305-224-1968. The meeting ID today is 891-2380-5402 on the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Wanted to get into some players this week who have been doing some of the right things. Tristan Wirfs obviously starting things off on the right foot. But there's a lot of young guys who we're hearing good things about. And I think as the years go by and you hear about these players who show up to camp ready to go, polished is a word that's being tossed around. You hear about this stuff about the young guys. I feel like this is the most we've heard about the young guys in a very, very long time. I don't know if that speaks to the culture. I don't know if that speaks to the level of expectations set by their teammates and the coaching staff. But this crop of rookies and even some second-year players, third-year players, these guys are showing up ready to practice, ready to play. Reportedly on the defensive side of the ball, Yaya Diaby practicing with intensity. He's getting after the quarterback. He's winning against Luke Gedeke in particular quite often. Now, again, no pads, so it's tough to get a full gauge. But the fact that the first day of training camp, he's practicing like he wants to go out there and get another 7.5 sacks this season, that's really good to hear.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And like you said, and we've talked about this a lot, and we have to remind everybody every training camp, really. I mean, specifically, I would say with skilled group players, the running backs, the wide receivers, tight ends, and it's notable because we're going to be talking about a wide receiver soon. Kenny Bell, right?
Yeah, we have a name for it. We have a term. I don't know if we can coin that one because I want to say I heard that from someone else beforehand, but that's what I like to call it.
We definitely use it the most. So, I mean, the Kenny Bell effect is real. Kenny Bell. So for people that don't know what that means or who that is, I Bleav it was 2000. It was either 2014 or 2015. The Bucs drafted Kenny Bell, wide receiver out of Nebraska, in like the 5th or 6th round. And during OTAs and rookie camp, he was great. Like I mean, all over the place. And I liked the draft pick at the time too. He was all over the place during training camp, during the first 4 or 5 days. Fantastic, just dynamic. All over the place. Pads come on. Not much. You don't hear much about Kenny Bell. Preseason games, you don't really hear much about Kenny Bell. Okay, he's a rookie, 6th-round pick and stuff. The next year, the same exact thing happens. He's playing in shorts and a T-shirt, doing great. Fantastic. The pads come on. You don't hear much about Kenny Bell. That's what we're saying about it's a different game, right? When the pads come on, anybody can go out there and play well in shorts and a T-shirt. These guys are professional football players, right? They've been doing this all their lives. They're really darn good, right? So Kenny Bell is sort of a cautionary tale of look at it, right? It's good. It's not a bad thing, okay? We're not saying it's a bad thing, whether it's Yaya Diaby or Jalen McMillan, who we'll talk about in a little bit, or whoever it may be. It's not a bad thing that they're looking good. It's a good thing. Just be a little cautious. That's all. So, but yes, it is good to see Yaya Diaby. It's tough to gauge, like you said, like offensive and defensive lines. It's really hard to gauge without pads. I mean, even with pads during the camp practices, because you're not trying to get hurt during these practices. So you're really not going like as hard as you would in a game. But it is nice to see Yaya Diaby come back. And look, man, I've said it before. I'll say it again. They're putting a lot of faith in him. I mean, because they didn't really do a ton to address the pass rush, right? They used a 2nd-round pick on Chris Braswell, signed Randy Gregory. Now, Braswell's a rookie, and Gregory might not even be on the team come week 1. So you could be looking at basically Yaya Diaby, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Anthony Nelson getting a lot of snaps here. And I mean, there's not much of a proven track record there with a lot of those guys. So they're relying on Diaby to take another step. Now, does that mean they're expecting 14, 15 sacks or 10 plus sacks? No, I don't think so. But I think they're expecting him to take another step and be better. And really, expecting is one thing, but they kind of need him to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. You were doing your position breakdowns here before camp with James Hill, Mr. Bucs Nation. Sorry, I had a lapse there. James does that to my head sometimes.
Yeah, he's easily forgettable. So,
so you guys were doing the position breakdowns and kind of talked about how this outside linebacker room, in particular, the set of edge rushers the Buccaneers are working with this year, you're going to need a big year from Yaya Diaby. You're going to need a big year from one of those guys, and there's a ton of pressure on all of them to go out there and perform up to the expectations that are set. Now, going back to Diaby and his practice this week, when I hear about guys practicing with intensity, I always think back to that classic clip of John Randall in the Vikings uniform, and it was him running a defensive drill next to one of his teammates who is literally a practice squad guy. I don't know his name, but it's just a 20-second video of that guy doing the drill and then John Randall doing the drill. And it's no contact. You know, it's like a shuttle.
It's no contact, but it's different.
Yeah, you can just tell. You can tell the intensity. You can tell the ferociousness. And I think what that ultimately teaches and what that sets the tone for is playing how you practice, practicing how you play. And Yaya Diaby, man, he's a player that I have a lot of stock in personally. So I'm excited to see what he can do this season. And I hope he becomes a player that this pass rush can lean on. I certainly think that'll do some good. Talking about some other young stars, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball before we talk about Jalen McMillan. But Zion McCollum, really having some good practices this week. Got kind of picked on here and there, but he made some big plays in the goal line period, I believe on Thursday. But he was matched up with Mike Evans for most of that day and gave Mike a couple of fits here and there. So Zion McCollum, a guy who's going to be stepping up into an even bigger role this season, believe it or not, now with the departure of Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean getting bumped up to cornerback 1. More eyes are on McCollum than ever, and it seems like early on in training camp, he is definitely ready for the pressure.
Yeah, and McCollum's another guy that they are really, really putting a lot of faith in, you know, and I actually talked about that on the positional breakdown of the cornerbacks, which is available now. Actually, most of them now, I think we got one more. So one more to come out. The rest of them are out, folks. So if you guys want to go watch them, is all available on the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel, offense and defense. It's all available there. So go check those out. But yeah, they are putting a lot of faith in Zion McCollum. And I would almost argue maybe more faith in McCollum than even Yaya Diaby, because, I mean, Yaya Diaby had a really good rookie season. McCollum hasn't really put together. He's been good for some stretches, right? And in spurts. And you've seen it before. But his rookie year, he didn't really play much corner, didn't really get much opportunity. Last year, he got a little bit more opportunity because of injuries and whatnot. But it's a risk because he's going to be exposed to a lot of different wide receivers now, a lot of different looks, and going to be playing a lot of football. And based on what we've seen with Jamel Dean, there's a good chance Jamel Dean doesn't play in all 17 games. Like he's gotten banged up quite often. So there's going to be times that Zion McCollum is covering a team's number one wide receiver, you know, and we're talking about when they're playing some high-level offenses this year. You know, they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles again. They're playing the Kansas City Chiefs again, the San Francisco 49ers, the Baltimore Ravens. You know, they're playing some I mean, even, you know, the Washington Commanders. If Jamel Dean's not playing in that game, it's Zion McCollum versus Terry McLaurin. I mean, Terry McLaurin's a darn good football player. So, you know, it is a lot of faith that they're putting in McCollum. So it's good to see that he is making some plays here. I'm interested to see, because I do think when the pads aren't on, the practices favor the offense more when the pads aren't on, right? I think when the pads do come on, the corners can bump and run a little bit more. You can get a little bit more physical. So I am curious to see how that goes once those pads come on. But we will see. It is good that McCollum is early on, right, performing well, because the Bucs they're going to need it. I mean, you got Bryce Hall behind him. But other than that, in terms of guys who play outside, I guess Tavier Thomas could, but in an ideal world, you probably don't have him there. Yeah, the Bucs, I mean, and the Bucs are really high on McCollum. They've been for a long time. And look, we tried to tell a lot of people in the offseason when, when they were like, oh, they need a corner, they need a corner. You may think they need a corner, but they don't, right? Or at least they want to see what McCollum is before they decide that. So they're big fans of Zion McCollum, and hey, we'll see if their decision to trade away Carlton Davis and hand it to him, we'll see if it pays off. But that's it's a big risk.
Yeah, and it seems like it always happens this way when we look at the early going of the Bucs schedule and we try and pick and choose what the toughest teams are going to be for this group of cornerbacks. But, I mean, let's be realistic here. The first 5 games, you've got Detroit, you've got Philadelphia, you've got Atlanta. Those are 3 offenses that can move the ball on you.
Yes.
And I think those are 3 offenses that
with all 3 have darn good quarterbacks too.
Yeah, quarterbacks that protect
Kirk Cousins is not Desmond Ridder. I mean, I think Bucs fans are gonna find that out pretty quickly. The Bucs defense is gonna have to play better against Atlanta this year than they have in the past.
Yeah, and I know Jalen Hurts ended up having the season he did last year, but remember what they looked like week 3 against the Bucs. Remember what they played like in the beginning of that season. Like up until week 9 or 10, the Eagles were not a team that limped into the playoffs like we saw a little bit later. But let's talk about some other players here as well that are standing out this week. Zion McCollum, one of those on the list. The other one on defense. Before we talk about the offense, sorry, I know we said we were going to talk about McMillan, and we will get to it. That is the name everybody wants to hear. But I wanted to talk about another defensive back. That is Tyke Smith out of Georgia. Got some first-team reps at nickel corner this week, and he is one of those guys, along with Christian Izien and some others, who you mentioned could rotate in and out of that nickel corner spot this year. Who are those guys, and ultimately, do you think they settle on one guy more than the others by the end of the season, if that's not a dumb question?
Yeah, I mean, no, there's a lot of guys, right? And I don't think it's a dumb question at all, because I think it's a pretty major training camp battle that they have. And actually, I do actually have an article up on Bucs Nation right now that just got posted, I Bleav, maybe this morning about training camp battles to watch for the Buccaneers in 2024. And one of the battles was nickel corner. And I basically had it as Christian Izien versus Tyke Smith versus Tavier Thomas. I think your nickel corner is going to be one of those guys. In today's NFL, the nickel corner is essentially a starter. In today's NFL, you have to have a reliable nickel corner because teams are just going to be able to throw so many different looks at you, right? The tight ends are more athletic. You got running backs lining up a receiver. For the longest time, the Buccaneers had 3 great wide receivers, right? I mean, they had a freaking offense with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown. The opposing defense needed 3 good corners, like the opposing defense, or else they were going to get killed. The nickel corner is important. Christian Izien played well in camp last year, started off the season hot, fizzled out a little bit towards the end. I think you have to remember he's an undrafted free agent, right? He's a rookie. So we'll see if he can develop a little bit more. Tavier Thomas, obviously the veteran coming over from Houston, has the most experience, obviously. So I would guess maybe to start the season, it wouldn't shock me if he's the guy there, kind of. And then Tyke Smith, who obviously I think has the highest upside of them all. Obviously, the Bucs Bleav so as well. They picked him, in the 3rd round this past year, where I didn't really think they would prioritize nickel corner as much as they did, as highly as they did, picking him in the 3rd round. But they did, and I do like his potential, but I do think there could be some growing pains there. So I think you're going to have to work with him, work through it. And that's why I wonder if Tavier Thomas maybe starts the year at nickel corner, and then we see where things go, right? If Tavier Thomas is doing great, you probably don't want to rock the boat. But if he starts to struggle a little bit, I think that's where a guy like Tyke Smith or Christian Izien could step in. But, I mean, it is good to have that versatility, though, because both Izien and Smith can play safety. Yeah. Tavier Thomas is more just of a strictly corner, but Smith and Izien can both play safety if they're not at the nickel spot. So I do think it's valuable, but I'd say right now I would guess Tavier Thomas is the week 1 starter. That's without seeing a single preseason game. That injuries can obviously happen, which could change things. So we'll see, but I do think they would probably lean on the veteran at least to start the season.
Yeah, and honestly, that versatility in a Todd Bowles defense does such a great job at opening up the creativity that he has in that playbook. We've seen him come at a defense come at an offense with so many different fronts. He has so many different packages, so many looks he can bring out there. And, as you learn more about these guys as the season goes on, you can play to their strengths. You know who's good at what. If you want a run support look out there because they're run-heavy team like maybe Detroit, then so be it. Put Jordan Whitehead out there, watch him go do work. I think you can mix and match. You can get creative, and you can ultimately find what works. Because if there's a guy that doesn't end up working out in that nickel corner spot, he can bump to safety, get some valuable reps. He can do a lot of different things in this Todd Bowles defense. He could find himself running after the quarterback for all we know. So it'll be interesting to see just how creative he decides to get, and honestly how a lot of these guys adapt into the system, because I think Bowles can really get the most out of some of these younger guys who wouldn't potentially be getting these reps on other teams with certain depth. But let's talk about the offensive side of the football here. Mike Evans is obviously a big name at wide receiver. And it's the same conversation for Mike Evans every single year. Now, we haven't had him go down with cramps yet. We're going to pray that he doesn't. I hope that he stays hydrated and we don't have any reports like that from training camp, because that seems like a yearly occurrence. But aside from that, he's picked up exactly where he left off. He looks exactly like Mike Evans should after you pay him that contract. And there were even reports saying that, when you go out there and you watch that Wednesday practice, a lot of people would be hard-pressed to say that he was 31 years old. He looks damn good, apparently.
Yeah. He just is who he is, right? Yeah. There's not many words to say it. You come to expect it pretty much. So you're almost, you sometimes I think take it for granted, because you're almost sometimes like, okay,
used to it.
Yeah, whatever. That's I know. Okay, cool. He's going to get 1,000 yards. He's going to get close to double-digit touchdowns. He's going to lead the team in receptions, make some big plays, make some big catches. Okay, and you almost take it for granted because how good he's been, for how long he's been doing it. So, over a decade now he's been with the team. Drafted in April or May of 2014, so it's been with the Bucs for over a decade now. Hard to believe, but so. Just still work on that connection, right, with Baker Mayfield. And while the connection was there last year, it's a different offense now. So, it's not Dave Canales there anymore. It's Liam Cohen. So we'll see how Mike Evans has worked into it. I did find it a little interesting, and sometimes this is lip service, but I did find it a little interesting. Mike Evans said in his press conference that basically, one of the reasons he resigned was, after having a conversation with Liam Cohen and hearing how he would be used in the offense, it sort of excited him. And he didn't go into detail of what that would be. Obviously, he's not going to give that away, but I do think that's interesting. So I'm curious to see if he's just, like I said, that's just lip service and he's going to be used as very similar way as he's been the last few years, or even just last year or whatever, or if there is some sort of maybe different wrinkles that Liam Cohen is going to throw in to get Mike Evans the ball a little bit more, or maybe get him downfield a little bit more, get some bigger plays going, or maybe see what he can do after the catch a little bit, right? He's not really well known for that, but he can do it from time to time. So, I do think it'll be interesting to see how he's used in his offense, because he's a unicorn, man. He's a dude that, he's big, and while, he's not going to run a 4.3 or a 4.2, but guess what? He's pretty darn fast for how big he is. So, he's somebody that, is, like I said, you take it for granted, but he is a very, very good football player.
We talked about the level that this wide receiver room has been at for a decade now. Mike Evans drafted in 2014. He's obviously been a leader by example, but him and Chris Godwin have been playing high-level football together for now going on 8 years this season. Godwin drafted in the 2017 season. But I do think the veteran presence in this wide receiver room, it seems to rub off and help on some of these younger guys, but when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and I know Sterling Shepard is still new to the equation, but when these guys are coming out and showing praise to Jalen McMillan the way that they have, I can understand why people are getting as excited as they have about a potential wide receiver like Jalen McMillan.
That's also great for a young guy like that, right? To have those two veterans, to even have a guy like Sterling Shepard, to have guys that have been there and done that, right? Not just veterans that, oh yeah, you played 7 years in the league and you haven't really done much. No, I mean, these guys have been there, done that, right?
And it's not
Pro
even
Bowls, Super Bowls, massive contracts. Those guys have been there, done that. That's invaluable, right? You can't teach that, right?
And it's not even like a blanket compliment. It's not even generic stuff. He's in good shape. He's moving quick. He's high energy. Happy to see him out here. No, they're saying things like he's fluid. He's playing with a great feel for the game. He's polished. He's, still picking some things up in the system, but they are surprisingly impressed with the fluidity this kid has shown in the first week of training camp. But again, they've seen a lot of wide receivers in their time. They know what bad wide receiver play looks like. Exactly. That's the point that I was trying to make, and I'm glad that you picked it up. Because listen, we're not going to Kenny Bell ourselves here. But
yes, it's a long ways away. Yeah. We're 3 days into this thing.
But it definitely deserves some
$20 super chat from Black Gold 1999. After watching all these other teams players hold out, it's nice to see Tristan out there on the field. 13-4 LFG, bombs away. Football is back. Black Gold 1999. Appreciate you. Let's clap it up.
Wait, hold
on. There
it
is.
No. Yeah.
There it is. Third time's a charm. There we go.
Run the laugh track on him.
me and Rhett gonna be good at the Wendy's tonight. Don't you worry. Yep, there's the punchline.
All right, it's not that funny. Thank you to Black Gold 1999 for the super chat. Much appreciated. But we were just talking about how anytime Mike Evans says something good about a young player, it deserves attention. But I think it's important to note what exactly he's saying, because, he said a lot of just good stuff about guys over the years. Like, yeah, he's a high energy guy. Glad to have him on the team, blah, 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 blah. But this definitely seems like it means a little bit more. But
yeah, I mean, let's talk about Jim McMillan a little bit. Now that we're talking about Mike Evans, let's transition into that. Wednesday, is what it is. Thursday was his day, though. Thursday was absolutely his day. Made a nice catch over the middle from Baker Mayfield. Had a fantastic catch, I Bleav, on Christian Izien on like a fade from Baker Mayfield that actually got Mayfield pretty pumped up. And then the Bucs are running a 2-minute drill where the ball the objective is for the ball not to touch the ground, right? Just move the ball. And with as time expired actually in the drill, Baker Mayfield found McMillan for a game-winning touchdown. So McMillan had a heck of a day. His confidence really shows. He's celebrating after every catch, he was doing the first down celebration. He's spinning the ball. Looks like a kid that's full of energy. And that's what you want to see, on the other hand, and this is actually one of the battles that I had in my article for Bucs Nation this morning. I have Trey Palmer versus Jalen McMillan. Who's going to be wide receiver 3, right? I think that's a big battle. If Washington was coming in tomorrow to play a football game, it'd probably be Jalen McMillan. But like I said, we're 3 days into this thing. Trey Palmer, it seemed like struggled a little bit today. They're still a long ways away, though, right? We got the pads to come on. We got the preseason games to play. I think both players are going to get a good amount of playing time. Don't think you're going to see Mike Evans or Chris Godwin much, if at all, in this preseason. I think the Bucs are going to get a good look at both those guys, as well as a guy like Raheem Jarrett. Maybe get Sterling Shepard in there as well, since he was added, sort of late in the process. So I would expect McMillan and Palmer to both get a fair shake at this wide receiver 3 spot, but McMillan is off to a pretty hot start. But like we have to say, just tread with caution. That's all.
Couple of league topics I wanted to pick your brain on before we wrap things up here. And this goes beyond just Tampa Bay. This is for the entire NFL. The first of the 2 matters I wanted to discuss: Guardian caps. Seems like every single year the Guardian caps that for a while it was just the linemen, but now it seems like you've got more wide receivers, more corners, more safeties, more skill players putting them on. But they are added safety measurements, anti-concussion protocol for the NFL. They're these big globious globes that they put on top of the football helmets, and it seems like every year they get a little more stylish.
Yeah,
this year I've started
the Chargers had the thing where it looked like the helmet, right?
Yeah, well, now there's been discussion. Last year, it seems like the dialogue started, but this year, along with the 18 games, which we'll get into here in a second, it seems like they might be really trying to push these into being worn during regular games How do you feel about that? I mean, what are your thoughts on the Guardian caps? I know we're not players, but from a fan's perspective, what do you think?
I mean, I do think it should be a player's choice.
Yeah.
I don't know if it should be required. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather a player look a little funky playing football than have his brain be mush in 10 years, So if it shows that it improves whatever CTE or any sort of brain damage or concussions or whatever, if it lowers the number of that stuff and you have the data to back that up, I'm all for it. I'm all for keeping the game safer. I'd rather do something like that than take out rules, right? Than change rules to make the game like two-hand touch, basically. I would rather go the extra mile with different equipment rather than that. And you know what? They can make them so stylish, that like you may not even actually notice, right? But I do think that to me, it should be a choice. I don't think you should be required. I think maybe it should be encouraged, but not required. But I do think, anything to prevent, concussions or serious trauma that will impact you when you're way done playing football, right? I mean, football is a limited time only thing, and you have the rest of your life still. So you've seen a lot of guys starting to retire a lot younger, right? Michael Gallup just retired. Obviously, we know Ali Marpet, Luke Kuechly. I mean, these guys are retiring younger and younger because they don't want to risk that kind of thing, and because you never know, right? One shot to the head can change your entire life. It could be catastrophic, it could lead to you. I mean, look at Ryan Shazier. I mean, it's just, you never know. So, I mean, anything to make the game safer is fine with me. They do look a little weird, but I do think if they were required, I think after a while you just get used to them. Like I really do.
I think it's interesting to talk about because, I mean, obviously it warrants discussion. I think people love to break down anything that happens in the NFL. They could change the kickoff rules again, and I'm sure someone would do a 3-hour podcast about it. But in my personal opinion, I feel like this is a phase for the NFL as far as talking about the Guardian caps every year and wanting to get them involved into the game. I don't think they're ever going to reach a point where they are full on involved in the game. And I only say this because I think it's just going to continue to push the boundaries of helmet engineering. Believe it or not, in the NFL, there are 6 models of helmet that are determined to provide equal or better protection. So there are some guys around the NFL who are in a specialist position who might have to wear the Guardian cap, but they don't have to because their helmet. I think that's going to become the norm. I think you're going to have these companies step up, devote more funding, which they do every year. They run so many damn commercials about it.
Yeah, there's so much technology and stuff nowadays.
Yeah, I think we're going to reach a point where helmets are going to be more next gen than they ever have been ever. But I think it's interesting to think about the future of Guardian caps. And I'm a uniform snob, so purely from an aesthetic standpoint, holy God, I hope this doesn't happen. I hope we don't see these in games because I'm looking at the picture of Joe Alt in that Guardian cap with the connector over it. It just looks awful. I mean, I think half the game is aesthetic. Do you think Deion Sanders would have been nearly as cool high stepping into the end zone with a damn Guardian cap on his helmet? I don't know, man.
Yeah. You're not wrong. Speaking of uniforms, though.
Yeah.
The Buccaneers announced that the Creamsicles will be returning once again to Raymond James Stadium October 27th against the Atlanta Falcons. That is week 8. That's a 1 p.m. game. So, yeah, against Atlanta. The Bucs have warned them against Atlanta once before, obviously at home. The Bucs lost that game, as we've talked about. The Bucs typically don't win the Creamsicles, so I think they have one win, in the Creamsicles. So, hopefully the Bucs can buck that trend, and no pun intended, this year. And but the Bucs did announce this earlier this week that the Creamsicles will be returning, which was the expectation. I don't really think there was much thought that they wouldn't be, but now we have a specific date on what that will be.
Spirit of 79 is the theme this season as well. Last year it was just the return of the Creamsicles, but 1979, the first season in franchise history where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. They got their first playoff victory against the Eagles in the first round, and then they lost to the Rams in the NFC Championship game. But
seems like that happens a good bit.
Yeah, right. But I mean, really, the first good Bucs team in franchise history. So I can understand the angle that they're taking. If they lose again this year, holy hell, burn it all down.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you gotta just be like, all right, it was fun, but
no, I think you have to take a realistic look at rebranding the thing. If Spirit of '79 doesn't invigorate the team to play well in the creamsicles, mix it up a little bit. Go 1990s era next year. Bring back the 90s flair with the orange pants and the white creamsicle jersey.
Wear them on the road. Why not?
Why not? I think it'd be a killer aesthetic. I think a lot of teams are rolling out their own throwbacks. Jacksonville just released one last week, which
looks good.
Yeah, it does. Looks really good.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm waiting for the alarm clock game. Yeah. You want to talk about turning back the clock? What's more a let's turn back the digital clock. How about that?
10 years this year.
Yep.
Since they released the alarm clock uniforms.
Yep. See, they should have done it. The 10-year anniversary. They should have done it.
Who would have thought that 10 years from that day, they'd have a Super Bowl? Tom Brady would have come through town. They would have changed the uniforms back.
In the old jerseys, yeah. And they're wearing the creamsicles again, too. Yeah, but they should have done it, though. 10-year anniversary, alarm clock. That's what it should have been. You could do the awesome color rush ones. Yeah. They should have done the white jersey, white pants, and orange socks. You had to love that combo. Yeah, that's what it's. I'm waiting for that. I want that to come back.
There's people out there who say that was the best combination. One, which is crazy. No. Because I only remember them wearing the orange socks like maybe 4 or 5 times.
Yeah,
ever.
They didn't wear them much at all. Yeah.
Other than that, it was either black, white, or red. I remember red was the other primary one that they would do.
Yeah, black or red, I think were 2 big ones. Yeah. But I the all white. I don't even love the all white on these uniforms. I don't love an all white uniform. Like, give me white with the pewter pants, fine. Like I'm good with that. But all white is just it's too much for me.
I get it.
But yeah, so all right, what else do you got with the 18-game schedule, I guess we're talking about here?
That's it. We'll put a bow on it. NFL has talked a lot. Roger Goodell officially addressed the idea of an 18-game schedule. We said this when the 17-game schedule was announced. It only feels inevitable at this point that seems like the long-term goal is doing away with the preseason entirely and making it an 18-game schedule. I don't know if you can do that. Maybe one preseason
I don't agree with that. I think 2 preseason games is fine.
I think that's more than fair. I mean, I can understand.
I do it for the rookies. Like I need to get my guys like some reps.
No, that's
I don't want to throw my 7th round pick in week 5, to get some development. You're not always going to be up 49-10 or down 49-10 where you can just put all the backups in. So.
Now, what are your thoughts? I've seen a lot of pushback on this, and I don't really have much of an opinion on it one way or the other, but Joe Burrow, quarterback for the Bengals, had proposed something a couple of weeks ago talking about the idea or the possibility of if and when the NFL goes to 18 games, having 2 bye weeks and potentially setting up kind of like similar to an NBA All-Star break where you have the Pro Bowl right in the middle of the season where guys actually want to play. But this is football, not basketball. Guys are not going to want to play in the middle of the season.
Exactly. It's more physical, man. Like even if you did what the Pro Bowl is now, right? Even if you did that, imagine. And I understand it can happen in the basketball, right? It can happen in MLB All-Star game just happen. It can happen in hockey. Injuries can happen at any point, but imagine Patrick Mahomes goes out there because, they made the Pro Bowl more significant, and he tweaks an ankle. Maybe not out for the season, but he's out for like the next 3 weeks.
No, God forbid. Worse than that, it's the dodgeball competition, and he tears an ACL. Oh, how'd your franchise quarterback go down?
Gets hit in the face and fractures an eardrum. I mean, come on, I just don't know if that. I do agree with the 2 bye weeks. I think if they're doing 18 games, I do think it needs to be 2 bye weeks.
Yeah.
I do think that they should schedule it to where the Super Bowl was played the Sunday before President's Day, so everybody has off that Monday. That's what I would do. I wouldn't do the Pro Bowl during the season. I would keep the Pro Bowl the same way. I'm fine with the players. Like, yeah, okay, whatever. It sucks that, the really best players aren't there. That's sports now, it is what it is. And like, it's fun to watch, right? I'm glad that they've made the Pro Bowl more of a, if they were going to do what they were doing the last few years where like they weren't even tackling, I'm glad they went in this direction with the dodgeball and the offensive line, the thing. Last year they did the golf, right? The putt, how far can you get it to the hole? So I'm more so in line with that, and I'm fine with that. But 18 games, I think 18 games is too much. I think it risks the injury too much. I think it's going to be putting a lot of strain on these players' bodies. But if you have 2 bye weeks in there and you can make it to where like I said, the Super Bowl should be the Sunday before President's Day, I would be okay with it, I guess, if you had to do it. But I don't know. If it was up to me, I probably would have stuck with 16 games, to be honest. I wouldn't even gone to 17. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think we can have an entire conversation as well about what this does for the record books.
That's what I was going to say too. Yeah. Like, man, like now you're going to be really like those records are going to be like there's 2 more games. Not only is there 1, there's going to be 2. Yeah. Like, I mean, come on. There's going to be like asterisks all over the place. Like, yeah, Patrick Mahomes broke the single season passing record. He also had 2 more games than anybody else did. Like it's gonna be difficult. But I also think like you just went to 17 games. Like, why does it have to jump from 17 to 18 like within the next year? Like, why can't we you did 16 for how many years? Oh, I know, but you did 16 for how many years, right? You did 16 for a long freaking time. You can go for 17 for a little bit. I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah, and honestly, it would be a terrible thing, but the idea of like the league MVP tearing his ACL in a tug of war competition at the Pro Bowl in the middle of the season is hilarious to me. I think that would be so funny. Like, it'd be awful. God forbid we don't want anybody to get injured. But could you imagine?
A dude can't play because his hands are all chafed and everything from the rope. He can't.
Yeah. From the flag football game, he dislocated his finger trying to pull somebody's flag. Oh man. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
the quarterback has dead arm because he's trying to hit the target and the thing.
That's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I know we promised you Rock Riley today, and we will deliver. Rock Riley will join us early next week. We're going to get the inside dirt and more from the walls of Advent Health Training Center. Excited to talk to Rock. Unfortunately, couldn't get him on today. Just feeling under the weather, dealing with, a thing.
Feel better soon, Rock.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've been there, dude. I've tried to do a podcast with no voice before, and it's not worth it because then you can get the podcast done. You're not going to sound right, but you're not going to feel right for the next 2 or 3 days because I've been there.
Talking makes it worse. It just, it just does.
Yeah, it does. So we will talk at length with Rock Riley early next week, get some more updates on Buccaneers training camp, but that is it. Follow our show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. You can check out the YouTube channel right here at Cannon Fire Podcast and go check out our videos tab to take a look at Evan's handiwork, breaking down all the position groups here on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as we get ready for the 2024 season. They'll talk about some star players, who to look out for, what the expectations may be, and much, much more featuring Mr. Bucs Nation, our good buddy James Hill. You can also find him on Instagram at Bucs_daily. Check out his written work at BucsNation.com and follow him on Twitter at EvanNFL. Do you have any articles coming up this week or the next?
Yeah, obviously the training camp battles to watch is out right now, so you can go over to BucsNation.com right now and check that out. And we'll also, within the coming days, don't know exactly when, but it will be probably over the weekend at some point, have an article about Buccaneers with the most to prove in 2024. So what players have a lot to prove this upcoming season. And there may be some names on there that maybe some people aren't expecting. So be tuned, stay tuned for that, I should say.
Looking forward to it. Last but not least, you can find myself on Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Thank you once again to everybody for hanging out today. our good buddy Jack, Nathan Elliott, Christopher Cole, Willie Beeman, the moderator, stopping by, Mikey Kelly, and of course, you cannot forget Black Gold 1999 with the $20 super chat. Appreciate you guys once again. We will talk to you early next week with the legendary Rock Riley. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.